Welcome to the Hospitality Maverick podcast show with me, Michael Tinkster. We are on a mission to share what Maverick leaders know and do to build businesses that deliver strong results and positive impact on people, society, and the planet. Thank you to our brand partner BizSimply for sponsoring this episode. BizSimply is the all-in-one workforce management software that enables your business to become more efficient and profitable. The software designed and built by hospitality experts to enhance the way shift-oriented operators manage their business, optimize their entire people journey, and making every shift run like clockwork. And we join forces to help the industry to find new ways to become even more innovative in how we lead our people, how we operate, how we grow, and how we serve our customers. Together, we wanted to share strategies and tools to make the industry thrive long term.
You have to engage with the candidate audience where they are, and you have to make it hugely accessible and engaging. You've lost an entire generation that have now gone to do other things, so it's time to start again, target people where they're consuming. Gen Z consume in different ways than anything before them. They're on Instagram, they're on TikTok, they're not reading job descriptions. You've got to be proactive. The biggest thing is employers have this mentality of you post a job and people will come. It's not working because Gen Z are not hanging around on the caterer. They're not hanging around walking window to window looking for job posts. So if you're going to attract them, then you have to go and actually attract them.
This is Dan Hudson, founder and CEO of GiGL. GiGL is reshaping the way recruitment is done in hospitality. Via the video-based recruitment platform, they are delivering a more fast, efficient, and friendly and fun process for everyone. And in these times, this is probably one of the biggest challenges for operators out there, finding enough of the right people. So it was great to have Dan on the show to discuss how we can solve that challenge and much more. Dan starts out sharing his and GiGL's story and how he, through his work doing recruitment, found a better way for hospitality operators to attract and recruit people. We discuss many other subjects as well as what are some of the greatest challenges facing recruitment in a modern era, can technology help overcome them, and how companies can become better at attracting a diverse pool of job applicants. What role does artificial intelligence play in modern recruitment, and how can it be used ethically and effectively? And how can companies create a more positive candidate experience that reflect positively on their brand, even when the candidates ultimately don't get the job? Dan also shares some incredible learnings from his journey as an entrepreneur and CEO. If you like today's episode, it will mean the world to me if you could leave a review of the show on our website, Apple Podcast, or Spotify. The better the reviews, the better the guest, and ultimately, the better the learning is for you. Now, grab your pen and notebook and enjoy. So, today we're going to be talking about, I've heard yesterday, yesterday evening, I was actually to the Casual Dining Awards in London. Great event, lots of great people, but actually we're still talking about the same big challenge, and that enough of the right people at the right time, and also be looking as like an attractive employer. And that actually starts with how we recruit people. And what we're going to be talking about today is actually with our guest is actually how do we actually take that into the new era or the 21st century of hospitality. So with that said, welcome to the show, Dan. It's an absolutely pleasure to have you here today because I know you have some really exciting insights and experiences about how to take recruitment into the 21st century.
Likewise, looking forward to the conversation and thank you so much for hosting me today.
And Dan, for people that haven't met you yet and haven't looked into what you guys are up to and the problem you're solving, could you just give a bit of, an intro into the story of your background and why you set out to solve recruitment problems?
My background is HR tech, recruitment, and talent acquisition for, circa the last 12, 15 years of my life. I think my most recent, before I founded GiGL, I was global head of talent for a big US bank. So, to cut a long story short, when it comes to talent and talent acquisition, I'd like to think I'm quite a subject matter expert on the field. And I also can be quite clear and say it's pretty crap. The processes that are in place, the approach to recruitment, it hasn't changed in such a long time. The major innovation is a application form. So for a candidate experience, you're even less of a person now. Now you have to fit into the boxes on our application form. And having hired and run the hiring of tens of thousands of people, I took all of this learning to build what has become something called GiGL over the last 4 years. At its most basic level, GiGL is a video mobile first job platform. It is significantly more complex than that. But to keep it dead simple, by 2025, 40% of the hospitality workforce will be Gen Z. Gen Z consume in a fundamentally different way to generations before them. They are comprehensively tech native. Millennials grew up in an environment where something called Facebook came along. And we had the early Nokia, what were they called? The Nokia 2210s. And I'm sure you all remember them. The flip phones, etc. And, the objective was to get the high score on Snake. The world has changed so much. Gen Z have grown up with tablets, with smartphones, in the social media. They're comprehensive tech natives. And what GiGL fundamentally does is really look at how they consume information and then how we put information in front of them. And that's really, from a user perspective, we've replaced the laborious generic written job description with videos of what the company is, what the job is, who you're going to be working with, who the team is. So candidates fundamentally get to see it, and also they're engaged with it. If you think your 500-word written job description is getting read by anyone in Gen Z, you're just wrong. I don't even need to tell you about the amount of research we've done into it, but I think you can tell by the engagement levels and people coming into the industry, traditional methods don't work anymore. And then the flip side to it is you apply by basically answering 3 questions in the video. And the employer sets these questions. So it's mega simple. You don't need a CV to apply, which is a massive bonus point for huge numbers of our users. Ultimately, what does a CV tell you about someone when they've not had any work experience before and this is their first job? But seeing them, how they answer, their communication skills, their engagement, their motivation skills, that tells you everything you need to know. Right now, I can tell you that over 85% of the employers on our platform bring candidates straight in for final round / trial shift. So it's really, really fast from a process perspective.
So in principle, what you are doing is actually you're not just taking recruitment, taking digital has been done, but actually it's about the whole engagement and the whole behavior and reading the behaviors in the recruitment, actually creating a product they want to apply through. Actually, meeting them where they are, like the ABC of marketing, really understand how your customers want to be served in that channel.
I think that companies within hospitality do a phenomenal business of targeting customers. through various social media, through promotional activities, through high street presence, whatever it may be, through brand knowledge, brand awareness. But when it then comes to finding staff, there's typically a little hidden bit on the web page, on the website, that says careers/work for us. Or what we see time and time again, if you just walk down the high street, is simply a flyer in the window, handwritten flyer in the window saying basically, come and work for us. Like it is in a modern world, it is so archaic, it's unreal. And what's the likelihood of a potential future member of staff just happening to walk past the window? Um, I love recruitment, I love talent, and most of all, I love technology. And I love how technology has fundamentally changed consumption patterns. You look at the hospitality industry, and you look at, kind of 7, 8 years ago, most kitchens in people's houses would have 5 or 6 takeaway menus in. They'd have a drawer with the tea towels, tin foil, and 5 or 6 takeaway menus. That doesn't exist anymore. Everyone has Deliveroo, Just Eat, Uber Eats, etc. And hospitality companies and restaurants are very fast to convert to start using that kind of technology. Um, but when it comes to hiring, they're still stuck in the, oh, let's put a flyer in the window. We've got a bit of space because it's not a takeaway menu stuck in the window anymore.
It's really interesting because also I totally agree. You've definitely seen, especially what do you call it, a speed up of the revolution of technology serving the customer, and especially the pandemic did that. But actually, the whole internal bit, if you just take the people journey, the operations journey, that actually supports delivering the promise, the marketing promise, from a technology point of view, have definitely not followed yet. You can see some of the progressive companies are now actually saying we can't open any more channels, we can't take any more, we can definitely create sales, but we haven't created the capacity or made the capacity work well enough. And that goes all the way back to the number of people you need to recruit and how you recruit them.
It's regularly in the newspaper of restaurants being closed for a couple of days a week because they don't have the staff to serve. Like, they've done a great job of getting customers in, but they've done a bad job of getting the resources to supply the demand. Which, I think the positive to take away is there's demand from customers, and which is super cool. That's the most exciting thing about the industry. There is huge demand. I think post the pandemic, post COVID, even with the increase in cost of living, people want to live. And I think fundamentally, hospitality brings people together, gives them experiences. And, you walk into, it's a Friday night, walk into most pubs or restaurants in the West End of London and in high footfall areas. They're all busy, which is super amazing to see and super exciting. Um, and so the demand is there fundamentally, which is great.
What is like the ultimate mission of GiGL? What is the change you want to see with your business? When you're a founder of something, you always have some kind of audacious mission that you want to fulfill.
Yeah, you're not going to get an Elon Musk answer from me on this one, unfortunately. What I do, as I touched upon, I love technology, and if you look at how technology has fundamentally changed consumption patterns over the last 10 years, whether it's food delivery, which you've just spoken about, whether it's dating. Once upon a time, people would go into a bar or a club or go to a party and meet your future partner. Now everything's driven through an app. Whether it's transport, you don't need to get a taxi. Everyone has an app to get something. Betting, media consumption have fundamentally changed by the use of technology. However, if you want a job, you still have to apply with a CV. It's an acronym for curriculum vitae, which is Latin. Um, I fundamentally want to bring recruitment, and not just recruitment, but the process of finding a job up to date. My ambition is you get your first job, you get your first, second, third job using our technology. Especially Gen Z, sub 21-year-olds, etc. It's making their lives really simple, really easy, really fast, and really engaging when it comes to getting jobs. Also, and I think for me this is a major thing, the accessibility of work. I had a good CV because I was from a very well structured family unit. I had a mother and father. I had a computer at home, etc. Everything was set up for me to be a success. You take any element of that out of the equation, the likelihood of you being a success and getting your first job diminishes. The thing I love about hospitality is it's an amazing industry. You learn so many skills. When I class hospitality, I class hospitality and entertainment, that whole sphere together. You learn amazing skills, you have amazing life experiences, and it can set you up at the same time as earning some money. And suddenly you realize what work is all about. The cool thing about GiGL is all you need is a mobile phone and a quiet corner to record an application, and there's nothing else to stand in the way of getting you into work. So for me, where do I want GiGL to be? I want GiGL to be the way you get your first job. And that for me would be amazing, because the number of people that then could get jobs, that could get into the working environment and have a positive impact on society would be huge.
What really makes you stand out or GiGL stand out compared to the rest of the market? Because there's lots of recruitment solutions out there, also technology solution. But what really makes you stand out compared to the others? What is the unique selling points?
What makes us stand out, I think, ultimately we're coming at it from a slightly different angle. A lot of the recruitment activities out there are agency based or high cost based. We see ourselves like a technology similar to Deliveroo or Uber Eats. We're a tech first business. We're an enabler. We're a marketplace. We're inspired by dating technology. So we're the facilitator of the environment, and we've seen some huge successes already. We're a top 100 UK startup this year. We've been in the top 50 in the UK App Store. We've created over 80,000 downloads, had 300 plus employers on the platform, some major employers, and ultimately we've just launched in Miami, and our very first employer on the platform was the Miami Dolphins, an American football team. So what makes us stand out? Well, what we're doing and how we're doing it, and everything we're doing is making us stand out right now.
And who is the typical operator that comes to you? Are they the big operators? Are they any size operators and uses the platform?
Great question. Uh, the reality is anyone can use it. We have, in our very first ever trial client was a company called Boulangerie Jade, which is the southeast and southwest of London. They have like 4 or 5 coffee shops. The manager of the store, who's a part shareholder in each venue, does the hiring in between, serving on the till, etc. So we literally learned from the ground up with the managers, the users in that would be doing the hiring and firing. So that's one end of the spectrum. The other end of the spectrum is we have Sodexo Live, the biggest hospitality company in the world on the platform, and basically everything in between. Whether it's, we're about to onboard the UK's fastest growing burger chain. Everything from 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30 plus venue companies, all the way up to global sports stadiums. Ultimately, they're looking for the same thing, and that's engaged people that want to come and work, have great communication skills, and are going to add value to their business. And that person, if they're working in a coffee shop or in a sports stadium, they're kind of the same person. And what we do is enable them to have access to that environment and to promote their jobs in that environment. I think the other thing that maybe makes us stand out significantly is traditionally recruitment is a one-way process. Hospitality companies, all companies, fire their job descriptions out there via the caterer, LinkedIn, sticking it in the window, and they just fire and forget. The problem is that there's kind of a supply demand situation right now. The supply is through the floor and the demand is through the roof, and yet you're continuing to take the approach of we just fire and forget and wondering why no one's coming to apply. Candidates want certain things. We've done so many surveys. As I said, we've had over 80,000 downloads. We know what people want. We do lots of research. We do focus groups, case studies, etc. The number one biggest thing is basically being ghosted. Like, this is a huge thing for Gen Z. You apply and then you don't hear anything back, or you hear something back in a month's time when they've already hired someone. It's just horrendous experiences, and this is a huge thing for Gen Z. So we built it in the app that if I apply for a job at your restaurant, you've got 7 days to respond to me. And in 7 days, we'll basically take that candidate out of your process. We'll say to them, look, we've followed up with the employer. They've not moved you forward. If you want to reapply, you can do. Alternatively, these other employers are very similar to this job in similar locations, and they're also actively hiring. So maybe you should look at them as well. Like, it's the biggest bugbear of candidates, and that's being ghosted, and we're replacing that.
And it is really interesting because I think always that has been really one of the most brand damaging thing in the recruitment process. I can go back from where you got paper applications when I started recruiting people. There was an application form hanging in the restaurant. People came and had it in, and then it didn't go into the right drawer. So we had to create systems about skimming the office every Monday to make sure that, a part of we were responsible for recruitment in the restaurant. You actually have been everywhere. There was no application lying everywhere. So it's not just in every corner of the office. It was every corner of the restaurant. You walked the restaurant to find application to avoid that getting the reputation you didn't reply. Because it was very quickly at a time you went on your laptop, printed out the letter and sent it off, like really, really old school. And then in the end, you find out I can actually pick up the phone and talk with them. That's actually much more powerful from a hospitality angle, because we are a hospitality angle. We should talk with their customers. They came into a restaurant. They've probably been customers of our business. So probably if we don't hire them, we at least offer them a conversation.
You just hit the nail on the head. That the conversion of them being a customer through their awareness or their friends being a customer is so high, it's unreal. And if they're not a customer today, they're probably a future customer because they like you enough to want to come and apply. And then you run a process where you basically ghost them. Like, it's the worst customer service ever.
And then they will remember that, because we all like to be recognized for, even as it's filling out a simple form or whatever it is, we spend our time on it. So we like to be, and also we fill that form out because we wanted to have the job.
The other bit you just touched upon, you had a weekly thing of running around to make sure there's no forms left anywhere. That's great that you have the attitude to do that. But the reality is it shows the inefficiency of the existing process. Like, you do stock take on a daily basis so that you can reorder and make sure you don't run out of anything. And yet you're now doing the stock take of staff on a weekly basis. And, the reality is it's kind of an afterthought. Put yourself in the typical restaurant manager's shoes. It's Friday morning, it's Monday morning. Is there 2 hour window to look at CVs or applications And then they email them to organize a telephone interview, backwards and forwards. It's a week and a half before you've had a telephone interview. GiGL's getting people hired in under 24 hours now. It's the manager, when they have two minutes between serving people, can quickly see on their phone an application, review it, and respond instantly. So it's just a huge efficiency play for the industry at the same time.
We talked through some of the challenges they're facing, old archaic systems that doesn't really live up to what's the expected of an employer. But how can company actually then become better, because they want to attract a diverse pool of employees? Now they understand we're not going to get all our employees just from young people, but it's also like we need to go into other groups or places we haven't gone for before, like people with other backgrounds, really to fulfill the jobs. That thing Kate Nichols talks about, there's like a 10 to 50% gap of staff that's not there, that we need to fulfill capacity. So how do they actually build these diverse pools of people now?
Yeah, I think Kate makes a great point. The the reality is the demographic breakdown of hospitality and catering and entertainment from a staff perspective has fundamentally changed. Something called COVID came along, and basically an entire industry was put on furlough or lost their jobs. And during this whole process, they discovered something called a weekend and elements of a balance of a normal life. And as a result, lots of people didn't want to come back to work and didn't want to come back to what they were doing previously, and then have gone to work in other industries. So, for me, it's a once in a generational shift of consumption pattern of staff, and you have to start building again. You have to engage with the candidate audience where they are, and you have to make it hugely accessible and engaging. Um, you've lost an entire generation that have now gone to do other things, so it's time to start again and target people where they're consuming, and that's ultimately what GiGL does. Gen Z consume in different ways than anything before them. They're on Instagram, they're on TikTok. As I said earlier, they're not reading job descriptions. You've got to be proactive. And I think the biggest thing is employers have this mentality of you post a job and people will come. It's not working because like Gen Z are not hanging around on the caterer. They're not hanging around walking window to window looking for job posts, like flyers in windows. It's not what they do. So if you're going to attract them, then you have to go and actually attract them. One of the things that we make a big thing, if you look at a typical job description, it's like, this is a great restaurant, this is our ethos, this is our background, this is our history, this is the type of food we produce. And then somewhere down the bottom, it comes onto what the job is. And then even further down than that, it comes onto what the benefits are for you. So you're selling to effectively a customer, and then you're selling the bit that they want to know about down the very bottom. With GiGL, we make all the employers do a specific video that's basically, what are the benefits to you of working here? What are we going to pay you? Let's be open and transparent. What are the benefits? What discounts? What holiday, etc. That's ultimately what they want to know first off. And yet the typical job description puts it right down the very bottom. So GiGL puts it up at the very top. You can go in, you can see the profile of the employer, and you can see the benefits and the rewards for you. And it's actually on any profile of an employer, it's the highest viewed video. And we give feedback to employers that basically, if candidates aren't looking at that video and watching it all the way through, it's because they're not connecting and they're not engaged by the benefits. And then we give them recommendations. How you market your company to future staff or potential staff is absolutely critical.
And it's very interesting you say that. Yeah, I think back as well, reflecting when you said that, it's like, many of the people I've worked with and then they stayed in the company or in the industry is because they needed to make, first of all, they took the job because they needed money here and now. And they didn't mind to work hard. They knew, but again, they wanted to understand what is the highest possible hourly rate I could get started. And then they get a different perspective when they join the culture and all that. And that was also something I learned in my McDonald's days. We need to talk about what they're really there for, to make some money to spend. And if it's young people, it was often they want to save money for travel. Like 50% of the staff I had employed as a restaurant manager back in McDonald's, they wanted to earn money so they can go out and travel. That was why they were there for 2 or 3 years.
I read an article and I will semi-quote it, but you'll probably correct me. But last year, McDonald's had 130% staff churn. The reality is UK hospitality, as an example, is twice the national average for staff churn. That's because some people are coming into the industry as a potential career path, but for many people, it's that exact thing: is they want to come in and earn some money, and it's a part-time thing or a stepping stone, and that's fine. But ultimately, that's what they're looking for, and you need to put that front and center. Coming back to the bit I said earlier about you have to build a new generation, those people coming into the workforce, they might be seeing it as a stepping stone, as a part-time or short-term thing before they go traveling. You should be seeing it as a golden opportunity to engage with someone that could be a future career person within the industry, that have come into it for one reason, to basically earn money and have a good time, but stick with the good time, learn the skills, and that's ultimately what the industry needs.
What about like we talked a bit about technology. What about AI? Because everybody talks about AI now. Is that gonna, I don't know if actually you have any AI in your own technology, but like how is that gonna play on recruitment? Is that gonna have a play? Is that gonna automate some things that makes it even faster or to the back of house?
It's an interesting question. I would start off with GiGL actually came out of Google's incubator. So, and I already touched upon, we are tech through and through. You know, I think AI is a phenomenal tool when used in certain ways and in the right ways. In reality, it's efficiency of algorithms. And without boring your audience, do I see a space in the future when GiGL can utilize AI? Yeah, 100%. Um, but we're nowhere near it just yet. But in reality, it would be much more to do with putting the right people in front of the right people. It's it's an efficiency, but ultimately, hiring in hospitality, entertainment, catering is people based. It will always be people based. If I can put the right person in front of you quicker, you still have to act upon that. And it's always going to be a people based industry.
Data decision recruitment is also not gonna take over, right? You get a profile out on this person that applies, and you use that with some data points to decide, is this worth the conversation? You believe that's not the right thing to do. You still need that human touch, especially in hospitality, because what you are in principle hiring is their people skills.
Correct. But also remember, this can work both ways. You know, it's a candidate driven environment. Candidates get to choose. And we see this, as I say, we have a 7 day no ghosting part to the platform. I can tell you, if they're a good candidate, like a really strong candidate, they're gone in 3 days. We can see they'll have 3 or 4 trial shifts booked in on the platform. So AI can work both ways. It's not just a selection tool for employers. My view of GiGL is it's the future of marketplace of staff.
What about like, because you use like video technology and so on, is that gonna replace some of that face-to-face interviewing process? Because it did over the pandemic, and for more other jobs I gone from, it's not been frontline jobs. I've been often been interviewed in the first couple of interviews remotely, and I was even pre-pandemic, and then you get in when you get to the assessment center, you're pulled into the environment.
Yeah, typically hospitality, and let's just say front of house slash action roles. So not managerial roles, actually acting in the restaurant or the premises. They typically go through a 2 to 3 stage interview process: CV, application, telephone interview, first round interview, face to face, and then on to trial shift. That's typically how it is. As I've touched upon, 85% plus of our employers bring candidates straight in for trial shift, because the telephone interview is basically to ensure that they have got good communication skills and are engaged. The face to face is to ensure they're motivated to turn up for work and they're going to fit with the team. GiGL has already done all of that for you. Our technology has already ticked all of those boxes. The other cool thing is, what typically happens at the kind of the trial shift stage is that candidates get to see what the working environment is like. Well, on GiGL, they've already seen it. They've already seen 2 or 3 videos of what the environment's like, what the head chef's like, what the floor's like, etc. So we've also seen a significantly lower amount of churn through certain of our employers we've been doing trials with. That we work with a couple of quite large companies that I guess have a certain culture to them. They're high energy, they're very vibrant, and it's very full paced. And that's not necessarily for everyone, but we show that in their video. So everyone who applies walks in knowing exactly what it's like. Those that apply having read the generic job description don't have a clue. They do their trial shift and they maybe last a week. On GiGL, the candidates that have come in have seen it. They know what the vibe's like and they've applied because they know what the vibe's like.
What about if you take like look a bit forward and say like what are like some of the key trends you see that's coming in recruitment that's going to change? You're definitely part of a setting a revolution, but what really is the huge changes coming? Because it felt like an area that hadn't changed a lot before we hit this really systemic issues around staffing now. And there's a lots of initiatives going on now, but what is like the 3 top trends leaders have to be aware of out there?
I would say the trends are already here and they're smack bang in front of us. The number one trend is basically the demographic change. It is uh, people have left the industry and are not coming back. It's time to build the future. That would be the number one. The For me, the number two is then engagement. Um, it's a different audience group that consume in a different way in a different environment. You need to act differently to create that environment and to target that environment. And then I think probably joint third is the candidate experience, which is basically speed and engagement. They don't mind a no, but they don't want to wait and be ghosted. So a no is much better for your brand than nothing. People are much more respectful and appreciative of an answer. The joint third with that is openness. People want to know what they're going to get paid, what tips they may get. Like, this is such the grey area if we don't really talk about this, etc. But it's part of everything. What tips, what benefits, etc. Openness is expected by the new consumer environment. So for me, they would be the kind of major points.
And it's super interesting about this. What you describe here is what some progressive organization actually how they've approached it years before this even became an issue, and especially this openness about actually, about these things that really matters for the candidates, and be very upfront, frank. this is how it is to work with us. This is what you can expect, and actually making sure that that promise, a bit like your marketing promise to the consumer, is then delivered as people arrive. And I know this is hard, but there is the intent to do it. I'm not saying it's always perfect and everybody's getting it right, but we had a couple of times, we had Nisha Katona twice on the podcast that talks a lot about that experience. The promise, if it's a consumer or an employee, has to be delivered by the organization. And Ari from Singerman's in the US talks about the same. And these are very progressive people first organizations. And it's not so much about the process, it's about delivering that promise, and then you build and find the solutions for that.
I think the final part, and this is, I think, really the challenge for that HR and the staffing teams, and that's people want flexibility. And people don't want to be working 80-hour weeks. That's not what people want and not what people are prepared to do anymore. And if you have an environment where they repeatedly have that and don't get rewarded significantly and recognized for it and made good, not just financially, but as an overall life piece, they'll go elsewhere. So I think employers have to be very flexible to fit in the resources that they need. And that's a major challenge, I would say, for HR. Um, Fitting the demands of the business with the demands of the supply side of staff.
You also been a business owner in this crazy time we're going through, and it's always interesting for me to say, what have been your most significant learning as a business owner? What is like really that's like a significant shift that's happened inside you, or the way you think business, or
I'll try and answer this in two ways. For me, being a business owner is phenomenal. It's so exciting. It's exhausting, but it's so exciting. Every day there's an opportunity, which could well be a challenge. Every day there's something on fire, which could well be an opportunity. But every day is exciting, and no 2 days are the same. And I know that sounds kind of cheesy, and it is truly exhausting, but it's bloody good fun, like super good fun. The other part to me is, from my experience, and whether this is in the startup world or in the hospitality world, I love spending time with other founders. As I already touched upon earlier, I was speaking to the founder of the fastest independent but growing burger chain in the UK, and like, he's super forward thinking, super fast, very good at making decisions, and he gets it done. And whilst there's lots of uncertainty right now, and the cost of living crisis, and some companies struggling, for people with the right mentality, this is all opportunity. For me as a entrepreneur, volatility is opportunity. If nothing changes, then fundamentally nothing changes. Large companies will own the high street, and the small companies and the startups will never get a chance because they'll just be priced out. So for me, it's a super exciting time to be an entrepreneur, and also a super exciting time to be an entrepreneur in the industry that GiGL specifically targets. The industry's fun. It's super fun. Like, it's people driven. It's super fun. It's all about living life and being engaged. We've also seen trends in kind of the experiential based environments. Whether it's Battle Bar or all of these kind of new pop up environments, like, it's really a really cool time to be involved. So I'm super excited. Even you can look at some of the traditional, very high end, like Michelin star restaurants. There was an article the other day. For a social eating house in Jason Atherton, fundamentally changing his menu to reduce the price, and so at certain days of the week, it's really affordable for everyone. So, like, if Michelin star restaurants are taking that approach, then that's cool and mega exciting to be in this environment and in this industry.
Now, that's a really interesting perspective because I totally agree with you because I'm both involved in, the hospitality side of like delivering the front line, but also on the delivery side with the product in the post kitchen, and also in the whole supply chain. There's bad disruption, but there's also some really good chances for actually we can get actually better solutions, better food into the industry. And again, I see it exactly the same way. It's tiring, it's full of its curveballs right now, but in a way, if you can find a way through the obstacle, I believe you become a better version of yourself. And it's all about balance, of course. Like, it's not about the crazy workhorse that kills itself. It's actually about actually knowing the 20% that give 80% and spending time on, as a leader, really reflecting on that, because there's lots of opportunity, but also you need to know and assess what 20% are I'm going to touch right now and learn from. And then when you've done that, take the next 20%. You can't do 100%. You can take 20% that gives 80%. And that's really the challenge that's up right now because it's moving so fast.
I wish I had all of the answers. Ultimately, I'm an entrepreneur and I'm learning every day. And for me, I think, do I make mistakes? Completely. Do I learn from them? Completely. And I think that the being a founder and also being a founder at this very point in time in the industries that I'm working in, that's super cool. It's the biggest learning experience I've ever had and will ever have.
How do you, as a leader, business owner, make hard decisions?
I'll be honest, I just make them. I think that if I'm true to the beliefs of what I want to do and where I want the concept of GiGL to go to, a hard decision today is not even remembered in a week's time. This is, I think, one of the things I found out not that long ago. I think I procrastinated over a couple of our own staffing decisions. And I procrastinated because I wasn't sure. But ultimately, once you've made a decision, a week later, you don't even remember making the decision. And I genuinely think that the more and more that I come to see it as a founder, it's like ripping a plaster off. Once you've made the hard decision, it's done with, and then you can get on with the outcome of it. Not making the hard decision, you just sit in this kind of in between land, not knowing, not making a decision. And it's better to make a decision and have an outcome than not make a decision and stay where you are. So I think if it's a hard decision, just make the decision and work with it. Your gut will always tell you which way to go, and then your experience and your heart will help with the outcome.
Yeah, that's a very interesting, and I totally agree. How do you talked about it's extremely, it's tough environment right now, but how do you then ensure that you show up as the best version of yourself every day, so you can make the positive impact you want to do on your team, your customers, whatever it is?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think there's two parts to it for me. There's the kind of self-help, self-balance piece, and ultimately I find this through sport, activity, etc. Like I'm fill my body with endorphins, any opportunity to go for a run, to like go for a cycle, to play rugby, etc. That for me kind of gets my balance. The other part to it is I have a really cool co-founder, Christian, and I think Christian can see it in the days when I'm exhausted, and he just takes on the people side of the business. He takes on the life and soul of the party, so that I can have my head in investor pitches, in finance stuff, in reaching out to new employers, etc. So for me, I think being aware of yourself and how you balance yourself is cool and really important, but also having the support around you. And Christian, my co-founder, literally does that. It's like he'll know that if I'm exhausted, he'll ring me at the end of the day just to check in, and the next day he'll have, I don't know, organized like simple things like tea and cake in the office or whatever it is, so everyone's engaged and having a laugh. So he takes that on when he knows that I'm exhausted.
And it's really interesting. You always need some people that looks after you. I'm a very big believer in. And then, temperance, as you talk about, balance is like a very stoic framework of well, it's important to work hard, but you also need to know when it's not business, as you says, to come out and do whatever activity it is that you need to do.
I think as a founder, no matter what, it's your head is always going to be thinking. Like I cannot walk down the high street and not look in people in restaurants' windows to see if they're busy. Because if they're busy and there's people queuing, then they need staff. Or if there's a flyer in the window, then they need staff. And we have a WhatsApp group in the business, and we take photos of this and send it to the business, and the employee engagement team will then reach out and be like, "Hey, your queue is out the door. You're doing great, but you clearly need staff." So even on a Saturday or a Sunday or whatever it may be, I never stop it. I think it's the game.
Oh, well, that's the game of running your own thing as well, because that's also the best ideas is often and the best solution on complex problems are actually not conceived in front of the laptop or at the desk. They are conceived when you're doing something totally different. That and then it's when you run back to the desk because now I know I know what to do. Or I need to go on the phone now. I need to call this person. What is your what the two more question, Dan, before we finish? What is your top advice to leaders out there that is building a business as a force for good?
Everything is harder than you would ever think it's going to be. Tech is always slower than you ever want it to be. But if you truly believe in what you're doing, keep the belief and just keep going as hard as you can.
I love that one. I love that one. What is the one question you wished I've asked you, Dan, which I didn't, and what would the question be, and what would you answer?
I'd probably one of these two. Obviously, this is a hospitality focused podcast, so the number one question is always, who would your ideal dinner guests be? And that would be the hospitality question. And I think from a business side, what keeps you up at night?
Hmm. And what is your answers to those questions?
Ideal dinner guests. For me, so unfortunately, this last week, my grandmother passed away. So I was at a
I'm
funeral
sorry to hear
yesterday.
that.
She got to 103,
Wow.
so pretty amazing. But I never met my two grandfathers. So I think to meet my two grandfathers and find out kind of where I came from and my history would be super cool. And I who else did I want? I think those for starters. I definitely want someone like Jason Atherton to do the cooking. And
Hmm.
then he can come and hang out with us afterwards, or a famous chef like that. That would be super cool. And in terms of the question of what keeps me up at night, I would say ultimately we're a tech startup, and tech is super cool, but super capital intensive. The current finance funding and business environment is very challenging. So right now, what keeps me up at night is pretty much the number of conversations I have with VCs and big corporates that are possibly going to invest in us. And so we're going through our next investment round right now. So I get a lot of questions from a lot of VCs and a lot of lawyers linked to lots of VCs. So that's definitely the thing that keeps me up at night.
Well, that was really, really, really interesting question. Really, two different aspects of the spectrum, and I think funding is going to be tough. Yeah, and it's really interesting who you would have at the dinner table. I love that. Where can people connect with you, find out more about GiGL if they want to check it out?
Number one, LinkedIn, which is we're on LinkedIn, GiGL, GiGL. You can find me on LinkedIn as well. So it's Dan Hudson. You can also email me directly. It's dan@getgiggle.com. More than happy to have a conversation with anyone. If you're a restaurateur listening to this, happy to stick you into a free trial, walk you through the platform, etc. I'm sure I often joke that, we speak to employers and they say they're not hiring, and we say, well, here's our card because you will be next week. And they always laugh because it's the truth. So if you're not hiring today, you'll be hiring soon enough, and happy to get you in and give you a free trial and show you our platform.
Great. Thank you so much, Dan, for taking the time out to come and share your learnings around recruitment and how to take it into the 21st century, and also all your great business advice on how you build your own business and actually the struggles and sharing them. So sending you and the team power and energy for the journey ahead.
Thanks so much for having me.
I really appreciate that you're listening in. So, if you enjoyed today's conversation, please share with others, rate or give a review, or subscribe to one of our channels, which all can be done via the website hospitalitymavericks.com. I believe that reading the right books is the key to become a better leader. So I've helped you with a curated list of some of the best books to improve yourself, others, and the organization. Find them on hospitalitymavericks.com. A big thank you to BizSimply for supporting us, bringing great insights, strategies, and tools to help leaders to become better every day. Check them out at bizsimply.com or on their socials at BizSimply or BizSimplyHQ. You can also email them directly at podcast@bizsimply.com. Thank you to Fina Charlson, who is the show producer from the Podcast Collective. If you have any ideas and feedback for the show or other thoughts, reach out to me via LinkedIn or via my email, michael@hospitalitymavericks.com. I'm Michael Tinkser, and you've been listening to the Hospitality Maverick podcast show. Be Maverick.